Tornado Cash developer Roman Storm pleads guilty, and is Peter Thiel the Antichrist? I don't think even he knows, as he launches a purpose-built Bitcoin sidechain for stablecoins. Let's kick it off.
It just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing. To be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
And that's Peter Thiel. Obviously, his back's up against the wall, but like,
well, I don't think you're the Antichrist. I'm just wondering, and in what scenario do you rape the privacy and autonomy of every single living American? I'm just curious what that looks like.
Piers, there's different gradations, you see.
That was pretty amazing though, because you could tell I don't know who the host is of Breaking Points, but it Piers
Morgan?
No, that's not Piers Morgan.
Yeah, whatever. But, okay, whoever it was.
There's that moment when he's leading into the question, you can see Peter Thiel be like, "Oh, I see where this is going." Yeah, the guy who's obsessed with the Antichrist is being charged with being the Antichrist.
Funny it's that it never occurred to him when everybody who watches enough Peter Thiel talk, it eventually goes, "Oh, I wonder if he's the Antichrist." He's he talks about it so much.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you can see sometimes looking at him, you'll where people will on 4chan or in the bowels of the internet will show photos of politicians and see you can see the reptilian skin, you can see the goiters and stuff underneath their skin that show that they are not of this world. Not saying I see that with Peter Thiel, but I'm just saying you can see people coming out with that.
Other people have said it, not me.
Yeah, other people have said it. Just really curious how you're going to screw over the average American next. That's where I'm coming from.
Speaking of the average American, we riffed too long at the beginning. We have to get into what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Roman Storm and the Tornado Cash trial. There's been some developments. You want to take this one because, again, it's, we're going to juxtapose some news about Thiel with the more, I would say, top of mind news, which is Roman Storm pleading guilty.
Yeah, so apologies for the bait and switch here, y'all. And you're going to hear me monologue here for a little bit because there's a lot of ground to cover. Charlie has very aptly named this the Comply or Die episode. And
Comply or Die.
And I think that is really important for contextualizing why we chose there's 3 stories, but Tornado Cash and Samurai, we're going to be bundling them into one. And then we're going to juxtapose that with the perfect foil, which is this weird new stablecoin focused sidechain that Peter Thiel's Founders Fund is launching. And it really couldn't be more perfectly juxtaposed in the sense that at the same time that you have these verdicts coming down for some of the OG coin join and mixing softwares in crypto and Bitcoin, you have a surveillance stablecoin basically being launched by the likes of Peter Thiel. So let's get right into it. I'm going to use Tornado Cash as the kind of leading story here, but we're going to talk about Samurai a little bit too, because both of these things magically, crazy how this works out, the verdicts came out within a week of each other, basically. And so for those of you who are not privy, in 2022, I believe, let me see, I have my notes here. Was it in August? Yeah, on August 8, 2022, OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, I believe that's right, sanctions Tornado Cash. Now, Tornado Cash is like the Wasabi or Samurai Wallet or Coin Market equivalent on Ethereum. It was a mixing service that people would use to de-anonymize their Ethereum and ERC20 token holdings, right? A lot of stuff happens in between there. Eventually, the DOJ takes up the mantle and takes Tornado Cash to court, and specifically its founder, Roman Storm. And just this week, the jury reached a partial verdict where Roman Storm was found guilty for operating an unlicensed money transmitter business. There was a hung jury. They couldn't reach a conviction for conspiracy to launder money. And he was also convicted of he was considered not guilty for conspiracy to violate U.S. sanctions. Now, the first two parts of this, the unlicensed money transmitter business and the money laundering part, I think are the most important. And it's the same charges were brought against Samurai Wallet's co-founders. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly. Keon Rodriguez and William Lonergan Hill. Those are the two co-founders of Samurai Wallet. They were also convicted on July 30th of operating an unlicensed money transmitter service, but they were not convicted of money laundering. Important distinction there, and in the sense that the state is, or at least the courts are kind of saying two things at once. There's this argument that, well, it doesn't really matter if you never custody the funds, you can still be considered a money transmitter. But since they're not actually interacting with directly with any criminals for laundering money, then they are not considered money launderers, right? And the backdrop for this is there's kind of two things going on here with how these CoinJoin services operate, right? On the surface, they are privacy tools that do not necessarily need illegal activity to be used, right? Like it's not predicated on illegal activity that you're using these, but they're most useful for people using the dark web, people who need to wash their coins if they got them from selling drugs or other services on the dark web, right? Or other black market activity. So the arguments against being considered a money transmitter are very simple. Both cases for Tornado Cash with Roman Storm and for Samurai Wallet with Hill and Rodriguez basically said, look, we just published code and we never custody funds for the people using that code. This is the code as speech argument, and also one of the key arguments for keeping crypto developers out of the eye of the state in terms of being money transmitter businesses, saying we never custody the funds, right? That's very important, and we'll get back to that here in a second. The most interesting part about this argument is that in the case of, I believe, let me see. Yes, in the case of Tornado Cash, Storm, in his defense, the lawyers said, we only published open source code after May 2020. The smart contracts were immutable, and no one, myself included, that being Storm, could censor or reverse transactions. And FinCEN's 2019 guidance says publishing and anonymizing software is not money transmission. So the federal government, FinCEN, says that this is not money transmission. If you're publishing software that involves, decentralized smart contracts and code, then it's not money transmission because there's no one, like the developers themselves are not actually taking custody of the funds, right?
Yeah, this has like 1990s like cryptography like battle all over it with like, the famous Adam Back shirt wearing is it armaments conversation. I'll also like pause here and say I totally mixed up at the hook at this top where I literally said Roman Storm pled guilty, but he didn't. Tornado Cash, or rather Samurai developer pled guilty. Roman Storm was found guilty. Different things. I know people are going to crucify me for this misstatement at the top. Regardless, you're hooked. You made it this far. We're going to get, please stay with us.
That's a good, that's a good distinction.
But they like go, they really go together. They're very like kind of complementary stories. And there's whether that's intentional or accidental. I think it's,
well, it is very good. It's, is it a coincidence that both these things are coming to a head at once? Maybe that's just the way that the court system, because they're being prosecuted, right, in different jurisdictions, I believe. Storm was being prosecuted in New York. The Samurai developers were being prosecuted
in a different place in New York.
They're both in New York. Yeah, both in New York. Oh, wait, hang on. No, they're both in the Southern District of New York. So anyway.
Wait, the same district?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
okay. Wow.
I mean, it's a great day to be a privacy journalist. Shout out to The Rage, run by Lola Leitz, and also to David Z. Morris, a journalist, freelance journalist, longtime journalist in Bitcoin and crypto. Used to write for The Breaker, really, really sharp guy, great writer. Anyway, they've been covering this on The Rage. Definitively, I would say they have the best coverage of any other crypto beat publication I've seen. And if you want to go to their website, therage.co, you will find comprehensive coverage on both Tornado Cash and Samurai Wallet. Anyway, back to just a few more housekeeping points before we get on to kind of thoughts and, armchair takes on this before we move on to the Peter Thiel story. The fact that FinCEN is saying that publishing this software does not make you a money transmitter, but the courts are actively saying actually it does. To me, I mean, this is why we have balance of powers, checks and balances. This is why we have the legal system. But this case really is a watershed one for crypto developers in general, because if you have a precedent that says if you are a software developer, you created some sort of software that transmitted money, and you, therefore, your business can be considered a money transmitter business. This opens up so many risk vectors for developers in the United States. And it's going to lead to, if not a brain drain, then a stonewalling of certain innovation. You're going to eventually have anonymous developers or independent developers who just straight up are not going to take the risk to build certain things because they don't have an army of lawyers willing to go, or the army of lawyers that are going to go into court and argue in their favor, right? They can't afford these things. Roman Storm and the Samurai guys had to have their legal funds crowdfunded. I mean, their legal, counsel crowdfunded because they just straight up didn't have the cash for these long drawn out procedures.
And there was also a similar effort crowdfunding the Samurai Wallet devs. Like I think people gave. I think I saw several Bitcoin at some point.
100%. Yeah. And so the real fear with this is that you are creating a precedent where developers for these open sourced protocols are just straight up not going to want to take the risk to build certain things, because now you have two cases saying it doesn't matter if you never actually control funds, you will be liable as a money transmitter. And you may even be liable for the money laundering that goes on. Neither of them got convicted for that. The jury was hung in the case of Roman Storm's trial. But they might try again with a similar case down the road. This is also really important when you consider a few years ago, I believe, I don't remember what the bill was exactly, but Elizabeth Warren and her cronies were pushing for this bill that would have deemed anyone running a node or even they call it an unhosted wallet, so a non-custodial wallet, or Bitcoin miners, they could have been considered money transmitters, right? So there are aspects of the state, there are actors in the state that actively want anything that exists outside of the custodial bubble to be considered money transmitter businesses, or to be considered out of bounds in terms of managing cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in a self-sovereign way, right? Which again, that's the entire point of owning Bitcoin to begin with. If you can't run your own node, verify transactions, send transactions on your own, and hold those coins offline in a wallet that you control, then, outside of price exposure, there's no reason to own the asset. So these two cases are going to be considered, landmark cases, I think, for how the United States legal system approaches open source software developers within the cryptocurrency ecosystem. Now, the silver lining, Roman Storm did not plead guilty. They ruled that he was guilty of operating an unlicensed money transmitter business. And his legal counsel has said, we are going to appeal this. This will probably make it up to, this could go all the way to the Supreme Court. As dumb as it is, I would love a Supreme Court case, because I do think that this type of thing needs to be elevated in discourse. I think we need to argue about it in a much more public way. Roman Storm, again, I think he's a very good person to rally around, and he's been a very, very good spokesperson and navigated this pretty well. Yeah, we need more people. I think you've even seen some of the big boys, like maybe not Coinbase officially, but you've seen folks at some of these like large exchanges like comment on this, saying that they do like wish to see Roman Storm not convicted like this. So I think you see there is like, even kind of in the more now institutional crypto level, you do see some voices for like open source development and in defense of this type of thing. So yeah, 100%. But there's no hope for that in the Samurai case, because they basically took a plea deal. Rodriguez and Hill took a plea deal. So on July 30th, both defendants changed pleas to guilty. And as a result, they were not charged with the money laundering piece. It's very hard to prove that they ever had anything to do with any of the criminal entities that would have been using Samurai Wallet to launder funds. But they did plead guilty to operating an unlicensed money transmitter. So as going forward, it looks like on November 6, 2025 will be their sentencing. That's when it'll be scheduled. They are facing a maximum of 5 years each. And apparently $6.3 million in fines have to be paid before that date, which is just absolutely crazy.
Man.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And Roman Storm is facing similar time in jail, 5 years, maybe 3, depending on if the sentence is lighter. But again, Roman will appeal this. It's going to go to a higher court, and it might get appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, depending on where it goes. So anyway, that's kind of the TLDR for this. Now, why does this matter, Charlie?
Yeah, why does this matter? Really, this is just the U.S. government and the powers that be showing us how not to do things.
Hey, Will here with Blockspace Media. Did you know that we have individual feeds for all our shows? If you're watching the Mining Pod, Bitcoin Season 2, or the Court Show, be sure to check out the individual feeds. You can find them on your podcast player of choice, whether that be Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. Just type in Blockspace Media and you'll find all our shows pop up, or just type in the individual show name like the Mining Pod or Bitcoin Season 2. Be sure to hit that subscribe and give us a 5-star rating so we can continue to bring you the best content in Bitcoin.
Whereas Peter Thiel, the lizard man at the beginning of this episode, shows us how we should do things. Because maybe instead of building really disruptive technology, we should make fully compliant, purpose-built blockchains for stablecoins. So that is what the second part of this is, where I feel that this story did not get as much circulation as I expected at the time. But a couple weeks ago, Peter Thiel and founders, behind Founders Fund, raised a second round, very oversubscribed, for Plasma. They raised $353 million in a very oversubscribed round a couple weeks ago. And this is actually a classic old school token sale, Colin. There's not, this is funny. It's the same old tricks that we've seen in crypto, where we allocate, I believe it's like something like 1 billion XPL tokens, which are the native token of the Plasma sidechain. and it's an investor pre-sale for the tokens. I won't really go into the specific design of the Plasma sidechain, but it's going to anchor on Bitcoin. It's going to post state updates to Bitcoin. But most importantly, it's super duper ultra compliant with all of the things that the US wants a blockchain to be. Contrast that with independent open source developers who build cypherpunk privacy tools. And this Plasma chain, you guessed it, all transparent. You can turn off and on any account. At some point, you got to wonder, like, why does this need to be built on any kind of blockchain? Because, like, isn't this just another database? If you're watching, so if you're listening, you won't see it, but if you're watching, you see, the classic investor token presale pie chart. And at first blush, this looks just like the low float high FDV meta, which is they sell a tiny portion of the tokens and the rest are allocated for ecosystem, investors, team. So you only have a very low amount of liquid tokens. In this case, a public sale of 10% of the token supply. That'll happen sometime down the road. The rest is reserved for about 40% for ecosystem, 25% for investors, and 25% for the team. Now, that $353 million raise, in addition to their first raise earlier this year of like $30 or $50 million, which brings it close to $400 million raised for this investors' 25% allocation, makes this one of the most successful like venture-backed crypto raises of the year. And it is, it's a who's who of the business. It's Founders Fund. It's some of the other people who are kind of adjacent to the PayPal mafia. They have an emissions schedule. It's proof of stake. So, there's yet another dimension of conspiracy. Validator network. I mean, it's kind of it's just the same kind of talking points that you'd expect to see. It doesn't really look too interesting at this point. It is just poetic that Peter Thiel of PayPal origination, who brought the digital dollar to the modern internet, well, really to Web 1.0, is now behind one of the biggest raises of the digital dollar of Web 3.0.
And explain what you mean by that with Peter Thiel's involvement with PayPal.
This probably warrants another Mark Goodwin episode. Shout out, Mark. But if you're not familiar with how we got to bootstrap commerce on the internet, it is very centered around the emergence of PayPal, because we needed a trusted place to trade and settle things and settle them in dollars. And PayPal really cemented the dollar as the currency of the internet. And Peter Thiel, part of a group which we call the PayPal Mafia, of which Elon Musk also comes out of, was instrumental in bootstrapping PayPal as these rails. Now, it does sound conspiratorial. Like, maybe you think you guys are crazy if you're listening to this. Like, why are you saying this? But if you read enough of this stuff and you see how it poetically tends to when the freedom devs go to jail or come under fire, the real big boys who promote the expansion of the US dollar tend to show up kind of as saviors. And what's funny is they're kind of heralded as such often by a lot of the corporate and banking folks. So yeah, there's your Charlie Spears soapbox, conspiracy soapbox of the week.
The one thing I want to say about this that I find to be the icing on the cake, not just, the fact that this is happening around the same time that privacy developers are getting slapped with fines and prison sentences for creating open source code. That itself is too rich and unfortunate, but the icing on the top of that Sunday for me is the fact that this was a token sale. So this was as far as I can tell, maybe not the first, but it is one of the first public facing or major token sales to happen after the SEC changed the rules to actually allow for token sales. Or forgive me, I don't believe the SEC changed the rules, but I believe this was a provision in one of the it was either the Genius or the Clarity Act that allows the SEC to, or allows projects to fund themselves through a token sale as long as there are certain disclosures and stuff like this. Now, obviously, it's a change of guard. I actually think that's a good thing. I think it's good that we can do token sales now, and people don't have to look over their shoulder and think they're going to get sued.
I'm actually, I don't have an issue with the legislation. I think the legislation is great and foundational. So
it's just insane that after, probably 8 years of the SEC playing whack-a-mole with random ICOs and crypto companies and token issuers, that you now have one of the most powerful people in the US, or at least his fund, Founders Fund, issuing a token sale after Joe Blow, did a stupid ICO in 2017 and ended up being made an example of, right? It's just, totally capricious enforcement and regulations with these things. And now that crypto is okay, you just get the likes of Peter Thiel doing, ICOs basically. So I just found that to be also pretty notable with this. It's just like all of the cypherpunk narratives are being absorbed by the blob state. So,
yeah. So we're not making any conclusions. We'll let you, the listener, make the conclusions for yourself. But if you would like to go further down the rabbit hole, we recommend one of our favorite independent publications, The Rage, and we recommend reading a little bit, but not too much, of Mark Goodwin's tweets and writings on websites such as Unlimited Hangout. Yeah.
A good place to close, Charlie, would be when someone asks you, what exactly is the purpose of Peter Thiel's new stablecoin sidechain?
It is well, there's several different things one could say. It's
have a beautiful weekend, everybody.
See you all next week.
The irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival.
I gotta pull the actual, yeah.
This is so funny.
It's amazing.
What a crazy thing to ask, too. Is Peter Thiel a Christian? Does he believe?
He kind of claims to be. He's got kind of a Jordan Peterson type, like, ambiguity, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It's impossible to accept what the Bible says is truth if we don't also look at the teleological end of manifest destiny.